Bull Market Bulletin.
All right, so are you ready to dive into Bitcoin today?
Let's do it.
You sent over a pretty fascinating mix of sources, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got videos, we got tweets, even some stuff about real estate.
Interesting.
So it's clear that you're tuned into all the recent market moves, and honestly, who isn't?
Right.
So let's try to break down what's fueling these Bitcoin price swings and try to make sense of where it's all headed.
Yeah. You know what I find fascinating is how Bitcoin seems to be at the intersection of so many major trends right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've got global economics, political maneuvering, this whole wave of institutional interest. There's a lot to unpack.
Well, let's start with that crazy price spike that we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the videos that you shared actually captured it live.
Uh-huh.
Bitcoin hitting 98,666.
Yeah.
It must have been crazy to watch that in real time.
It really underscores how dynamic this market is, right?
Yeah.
And while every price movement has its own unique triggers, zooming out a bit, January has historically been a good month for Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. We're talking average returns of 10.5%. So history tells us that this could be a very positive month.
Okay, so positive January, got it.
Yeah.
But the sources that you sent hint that it could be much bigger than just a good month.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of predictions pointing to a huge year for Bitcoin overall.
Right. And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
VanEck, a well-respected investment firm, is actually recommending that investors increase their Bitcoin exposure immediately.
Wow.
They cite things like hedging against inflation and this idea of global de-dollarization.
See, that's what intrigues me.
Yeah.
It's not just about the potential profits anymore.
Right.
People are starting to see Bitcoin as a solution to some pretty big problems.
Exactly. And the fact that a firm like VanEck is saying this publicly is a signal that institutional acceptance is growing.
Okay.
This isn't just some fringe idea anymore.
And it's not just VanEck either.
Right.
We've got Jeffrey Kendrick predicting Bitcoin will hit 200,000.
Tom Lee saying 250,000, and even BlackRock, one of the biggest asset managers in the world, is advising its clients on how to allocate to Bitcoin.
Wow.
It seems like all these experts are starting to point in the same direction.
It definitely suggests a shift in sentiment.
Yeah.
And this visual from one of the sources really captures it.
Okay.
You know that one that looks like a pharmaceutical ad?
Uh-huh.
Bitcoin is the cure?
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Right. The message is that for some investors, Bitcoin represents a solution to the problems they see with traditional fiat currencies.
Speaking of big players, one source claims that a U.S. state will buy Bitcoin within 16 weeks guaranteed.
That's Dennis Porter. And he's known for being a bit of a Bitcoin evangelist, let's say.
Okay.
I'm a bit skeptical, but the potential impact is definitely worth discussing.
I mean, if one state does it, and who's to say others won't follow?
Right.
And then what countries start jumping on board?
It's like a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly we're talking about a massive influx of capital into Bitcoin. It ties directly back to what VanEck was saying about de-dollarization.
Okay.
This could be the start of something really big.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got this bold prediction, but then we also have Michael Saylor being all mysterious about his meetings with the incoming Trump administration.
Right.
And then there's that photo him with Eric Trump both grinning, and the caption, 2 friends, 1 passion, Bitcoin.
It's strategic, for sure.
Yeah.
They're clearly trying to build momentum and position Bitcoin as something that the new administration should take seriously.
Okay, so we've got this potential government angle, which is wild enough on its own.
Yeah.
But then there's also this crazy activity in Bitcoin ETFs.
Right.
Apparently, it was the 5th biggest trading day ever for Bitcoin ETFs,
Wow.
with over $900 million flowing in.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday, which is usually a pretty quiet day for that kind of trading.
That's what jumped out at me, too. It's not your average retail investors driving that kind of volume.
Right.
This points to big money institutions making a move.
It's like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly all this institutional money is pouring in.
The question is, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
The sources don't give us a clear answer, but they do point to BlackRock's activity. They sold a massive amount of Bitcoin, then bought it back.
Interesting.
Some people speculate it's related to tax rules, but it definitely raises eyebrows.
Okay, so hold on. We've got this potential government interest. We've got big institutions piling into ETFs, and then we've got MicroStrategy basically betting the entire company on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Their stock is up something like 1,200%
Yeah.
in 2024 alone.
It's a bold strategy, and it seems to be paying off.
Yeah.
But there are definitely skeptics. A lot of people are betting against MicroStrategy, believing this Bitcoin-heavy approach is unsustainable.
It almost feels like this David versus Goliath situation, right?
Uh-huh.
Michael Saylor on one side raising another $2 billion to buy more Bitcoin,
Wow.
and a bunch of Wall Street types on the other waiting for him to stumble.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but the speed at which MicroStrategy is executing its plan is remarkable.
Yeah.
They're not messing around.
Okay, so we've got all this happening with Bitcoin, but, the crypto world is more than just Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
And I think you sent over some really interesting sources that highlight that.
And some of these are particularly relevant to you,
Oh, yeah.
especially that chart showing Australian house prices. But in Bitcoin terms,
Wait, what? House prices in Bitcoin terms?
essentially it's looking at how much Bitcoin you would need to buy a house in Australia over time.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that the chart shows a significant drop.
So are you saying house prices are plummeting in Australia?
Well, not exactly. It's more about how much stronger Bitcoin has become as a purchasing power.
Okay.
You could actually buy more real estate with the same amount of Bitcoin now than you could just a few months ago.
Wait, so Bitcoin could be a hedge against real estate devaluation.
It is, and it's one of the key arguments for Bitcoin's long-term value.
Okay, I'm going to need a minute to process that one.
Sure.
But you're right. There's a lot more to the crypto world than just Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
What else did you find in the sources?
Well, one thing that stood out was the contrasting performance within the altcoin landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum's Layer 2 solutions, which are designed to make transactions faster and cheaper, haven't performed as well as expected.
Okay.
But on the flip side, Coinbase's new platform base is attracting a lot of developer interest.
It's like there's a changing of the guard happening,
Well,
right?
yeah.
And speaking of changing guards, there was that survey of Solana founders.
Uh-huh.
The one asking them what blockchain they would build on if they weren't using Solana.
I remember that one, yeah.
The results were pretty surprising.
Yeah, Base and Sui topped the list.
Wow.
What's interesting is that Bitcoin actually came in 6th.
Wow, 6th place.
Yeah.
So even with all these new shiny blockchains popping up,
Right.
developers still recognize Bitcoin's importance. It's the OG after all.
Exactly. Bitcoin's security, its proven track record, and its potential are still major draws for developers.
It's like the wise old sage watching all these young upstarts try to make their mark.
Yeah.
But seriously, I think it's a really positive sign that Bitcoin is still on developers' radar. It shows that it's not just about speculation, it's about building something real and lasting.
Exactly. And that brings us back to you and your own journey in this space.
Okay.
It's not just about following the headlines or trying to predict the next price move.
Right.
It's about understanding the underlying technology, the trends that are shaping the industry, and how it all might impact your life and your finances.
I'm definitely feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information, but in a good way.
Good.
It's like I'm finally starting to see the bigger picture.
That's what we're here for, to help you connect the dots, see the patterns, and understand the forces that are shaping the future of finance.
So where do we go from here? What are the key things I should be focusing on as I continue to learn about Bitcoin and the crypto world?
Well, that's a great question and one that deserves a deeper dive.
Okay.
So let's explore some practical strategies for navigating this exciting but often confusing world.
Sounds good to me. We were talking about a U.S. state potentially buying Bitcoin before,
Right.
which honestly sounds pretty wild.
It's definitely a bold claim.
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge that it's just that, a claim.
Right.
But even if it's a long shot, the implications are fascinating to consider.
So let's say hypothetically this does happen.
Okay.
What would it mean for Bitcoin if a U.S. state actually went ahead and added it to their treasury?
Well, first off, it would be a major validation of Bitcoin as a legitimate asset class. It would signal that governments are starting to see it not just as a speculative investment,
Okay.
but potentially as a strategic reserve asset similar to gold.
So it's not just about the price going up.
Right. It's about legitimacy, trust, and adoption on a whole new level.
Okay.
It could set a precedent for other states and even other countries to follow suit.
So we've got this one state, but then it could trigger a domino effect.
Exactly. And imagine the impact on the market if multiple states with economies larger than some countries start buying Bitcoin.
Wow.
It would be a huge influx of demand.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be a really big deal.
Yeah.
It ties back to what Vanek was saying about this whole de-dollarization trend, right?
Absolutely. If governments start diversifying their reserves away from the US dollar and into Bitcoin,
Yeah.
it could significantly shift the balance of power in the global financial system.
But hold on a second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Right.
This is all based on one prediction from one, shall we say, enthusiastic Bitcoin supporter.
Fair point. We need to be cautious and not get swept up in the hype.
Right.
It's crucial to look at this with a critical eye,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's worth considering the possibility,
Uh,
even if it's remote, because the implications are so significant.
It's funny because this whole government angle reminds me of what we were discussing earlier about Michael Saylor and his meetings with the incoming Trump administration.
Right. Remember that knowing smirk when he mentioned those meetings?
Yeah.
And then there's that photo of him with Eric Trump, all smiles, talking about their shared passion for Bitcoin. The timing is quite interesting right before Trump takes office.
It's definitely strategic. It's like they're trying to plant a seed
Yeah.
to get the new administration thinking about Bitcoin and its potential role in the U.S. economy.
And who knows, maybe those meetings will actually lead to something concrete.
Okay.
Maybe we'll see some pro-Bitcoin policies coming out of the Trump administration.
That would be huge.
Yeah.
But even if nothing concrete comes out of those meetings, the fact that they're happening at all is significant.
Right.
It shows that Bitcoin is starting to be taken seriously at the highest levels of government.
Exactly. And when you combine that with the increasing institutional interest we talked about earlier, the massive ETF inflows BlackRock's unusual trading activity. It paints a picture of a changing landscape.
It's like all these forces are converging at the same time.
Yeah.
You've got governments potentially getting involved, big institutions piling in, and then you've got companies like MicroStrategy going all in on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And for you as someone who's clearly paying attention to the crypto space,
Yeah.
it's important to understand how these different pieces fit together.
Right.
It's not just about the price of Bitcoin going up or down.
Okay.
It's about the broader implications of this technology and its potential to disrupt the status quo.
Okay, so we've got this big picture stuff happening with governments and institutions,
Yeah,
but then there's also what's happening within the crypto world itself.
right.
We talked earlier about how Ethereum's Layer 2 solutions have been struggling while Coinbase's base platform is getting traction.
Right, and that shift in developer interest could have major implications down the line. It suggests that even within the crypto ecosystem, there's a lot of competition and innovation happening.
That's the constant evolution, right?
Yeah,
What's hot today might be old news tomorrow.
exactly.
And speaking of what's hot, I found that survey of Solana founders really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the one asking them what blockchain they would build on if they weren't using Solana?
I remember that one.
The results were pretty surprising.
The results were pretty surprising, weren't they?
Yeah, Base and Sui were at the top, which makes sense given the buzz around them.
Right.
But what really stood out to me was that Bitcoin came in 6th place.
That's a testament to Bitcoin's enduring appeal, even amidst all the hype surrounding newer blockchains.
Yeah.
Developers recognize its importance, its security, and its potential.
Yeah.
It's like the bedrock of the crypto world.
It's like the wise old sage watching all these young upstarts try to make their mark.
Right.
But seriously, I think it's a really positive sign that Bitcoin is still on developers' radar. It shows that it's not just about speculation, it's about building something real and lasting.
Exactly. And that brings us back to you and your own journey in this space.
Yeah.
It's not just about following the headlines or trying to predict the next price move.
Right.
It's about understanding the underlying technology, the trends that are shaping the industry, and how it all might impact your life and your finances.
Okay. I'm definitely feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information,
Sure.
but in a good way. It's like I'm finally starting to see the bigger picture.
That's what we're here for, to help you connect the dots, see the patterns, and understand the forces that are shaping the future of finance.
So where do we go from here? What are the key things that I should be focusing on as I continue to learn about Bitcoin and the crypto world?
Well, that's a great question, and one that deserves a deeper dive. Let's explore some practical strategies for navigating this exciting but often confusing world.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture, governments, institutions, the whole crypto landscape.
Right.
But what does all this mean for someone like me? Someone who's interested in Bitcoin but also wants to make smart decisions with their money.
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
But what we can do is explore some potential scenarios
Okay.
and how you might position yourself regardless of which direction Bitcoin heads.
Okay, so let's play this out.
All right.
Let's say this Bitcoin tsunami really hits.
Okay.
Governments are buying institutions, are pouring money in. MicroStrategy keeps stacking. It's a full-on FOMO frenzy.
Yeah.
What happens then?
In that scenario, we could see Bitcoin's price absolutely skyrocket.
Wow.
We could be talking multiples of its current value.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that with rapid price increases comes increased volatility.
Right.
There will be pullbacks, corrections, maybe even a major crash at some point.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a smooth ride straight to the moon.
So even in a super bullish scenario, I need to be prepared for some bumps along the way.
Exactly. Managing expectations is key. If you're in it for the long haul, those short-term fluctuations shouldn't matter as much.
Yeah.
Dollar cost averaging, holding a diversified portfolio, these are time-tested strategies for navigating a volatile market.
But what if the opposite happens?
Okay.
What if this whole thing fizzles out?
Right.
No government buys institutions, get cold feet. MicroStrategy implodes.
Okay.
Bitcoin is back to being a niche asset.
Well, that's certainly a possibility, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Okay.
The sources you shared suggest a fundamental shift is underway. Even if this particular wave crashes, the underlying forces driving Bitcoin's adoption, inflation, distrust in traditional systems, technological advancement, those aren't going away.
So even in a bearish scenario, Bitcoin is still relevant.
Absolutely. It might take longer for mass adoption,
Oh.
but the seeds have been planted. And remember, Bitcoin has weathered storms before.
Right.
It's been declared dead countless times, but it always seems to come back stronger.
Okay, so we've got these two extremes, Bitcoin going supernova or fading into the background. But what about the middle ground?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a gradual, steady climb with adoption happening incrementally over time.
That's perhaps the most likely scenario.
Okay.
We'll see continued institutional interest, more regulatory clarity, and growing awareness among the general public. Bitcoin will slowly but surely weave itself into the fabric of the global financial system.
That sounds almost boring compared to the other scenarios.
Yeah.
But I guess slow and steady wins the race, right?
It might not be as exciting, but it's arguably the most sustainable path.
Yeah.
And for you, the key is to find your own comfort level.
Okay.
Are you a risk taker willing to bet big on a potential moonshot? Or are you more cautious, preferring a slow and steady approach?
You know, this whole conversation has really got me thinking.
Good.
It's not just about the price of Bitcoin.
Right.
It's about the underlying technology, the potential for disruption,
Yeah,
the shift in power that's happening.
exactly. And that's what I want you to take away from this deep dive. Don't just focus on the headlines, the price fluctuations, the hype.
Right.
Think about the long-term implications, how this impact your life, your finances, your understanding of the world.
It's almost like you're asking me to zoom out even further to see Bitcoin not just as an investment, but as part of a much bigger picture.
Precisely. And that's where things get really interesting because if you understand the forces at play,
Yeah.
you can start to see the potential opportunities, not just in Bitcoin itself,
Okay.
but in the entire ecosystem that's being built around it.
Okay. I'm going to need some time to process all of this,
Sure.
but I'm definitely feeling more informed, even a little bit empowered.
Good.
It's like I've been given a glimpse behind the curtain.
And that's the power of knowledge, isn't it? It allows you to make informed decisions, to navigate uncertainty, to take control of your own financial future.
Yeah.
But remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The crypto world is constantly evolving, and there's always more to learn.
Okay.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and who knows what incredible opportunities might emerge.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our Bitcoin deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and as always, happy investing.
Market Bulletin.